This month, I seem to read a lot of science fiction and even literary fiction that questioned the future of humanity, what it means to be human, or even the future of our own planet. So, this is going to be everything I read in the month of March, and I'm going to try and do it quickly and concisely. So it's a new challenge for me. So, first book I read was on my Kindle. That was The Stone Gods by Jeannette Winterson. Side note, Kindle is just a horrible reading experience now. I either need a new Kindle or I need to just move on from Kindle devices. Anyways, this is kind of science fiction, more literary fiction. I would classify it as speculative fiction in the vein of J.G. Ballard. And I'm sure the Ballardian nerd army of YouTube will get on me for that one, but I don't really care. This is a really, really interesting novel. I had first tried to read it a few months ago and put it down, and I picked it up again, and I'm glad I did because it actually really pays off. I think it's really good. The crux of the novel is that humanity humanity does make the same mistakes again and again and again throughout history and throughout time, even when those mistakes are catastrophic, which they are in this book. It's a really interesting novel. It's definitely an experimental style in the sense that there's multiple timelines over very different periods of time. Some are ancient history, some are like a near future, some are a far future. And there's recurring characters in each timeline, recurring events in each timeline also. I don't want to give the whole book away. The timeline that I really liked the most, and I thought maybe could have even stood on its own as a novella, and perhaps it was developed as a novella, and then the other stories were kind of like shaped around it. I'm not really sure. It's in the near future, and there's been some sort of catastrophic war across Earth, and Earth is kind of divided into two societies. One is a very liberal, free, technocratic society, not unlike the US pre-Trump, I guess I would say. And the other is just kind of this other state, which may or may not be an Islamic state. We're not really sure who they are, what they're doing, because the characters never go there and we never meet characters from there. And there's still some fighting between the two. There's some terrorist events. The technocratic state has found a new planet to go to because Earth is rapidly deteriorating, and they think Earth will become unlivable very soon. There's this strange dust, they call it the dust, that's coming, and there's these weird dust storms that suddenly blanket the cities, and they're very toxic and things like that. Along with this is kind of in the backdrop. The main story is actually a love affair between the protagonist and an AI robot, or a robot with an AI in it, or is it an AI in a robot? I'm not really sure how you classify all that. That's really interesting, and the role of technology and how technology is hyper-romanticized in that society to the point where they feel they're using the technology to try and save themselves, and people are falling in love, literally falling in love with technology. It's a very, very interesting book. Highly recommend it. Don't let the sci-fi stuff scare you off. If you like speculative fiction of any type, fiction that just asks kind of those big questions, I think you would definitely like this book. It's a great book. I'm going to try to read more of Jeannette Winterson. So there was that. Next one, I actually just finished reading this today, Ice by Anna Kavan. Thankfully, I have a real copy of it, not on my Kindle. An incredible novel, an incredible little novel. It's less than 200 pages. I really knew nothing about this. I had seen it mentioned in, I think, a BookPilled review. And for some reason, I saw it available here in Shanghai, and so I just snapped it up. What a strange and powerful and bizarre little book. I don't know how to describe it. It's really weird in all the right ways. So the basic premise of the book, Earth is again, kind of going through some strange changes, like literally the planet Earth. There's been, again, a strange war, possibly a nuclear war. And as a result, the atmosphere and the environment is rapidly changing to an ice age, basically. And it's a very violent kind of change. It's not just temperatures dropping. There are scenes where there's great walls of ice kind of coming ashore from the seas and knocking down towns and things like that. It's very like weird in a very like 50s or 60s kind of sci-fi way, but not. It's not campy. It's very existentialist. If there's one thing that carries this book all the way through our one theme, it's that of existentialist dread. It's that of how are we going to continue to live? And the characters sometimes even have conversations of basically they say to each other like, we're all going to die in like 2 or 3 weeks, so what's the point of what we're doing? So I'm laughing because it's just like so preposterous and yet also kind of so realistic at the same time. While all of this is happening, the protagonist is a kind of scientist slash adventurer slash explorer, and he is undertaking some scientific experiments and observations of the ice, and at the same time trying to find a woman who he had a love affair with a long time ago. He wants to find her, but she doesn't want him to find her. She doesn't want anyone to find her. She kind of keeps fleeing, and so he's moving across continent to continent, country to country, kind of trying to stay one step ahead of the ice, and she's like one step ahead of him at the same time. And so we get this like weird mix of him moving around the world and through these different countries, observing the social decay and chaos that's happening from the wars and then from the environmental crisis that's happening. And also at the same time, he has all these kind of like strange disassociative episodes and these weird fever dreams of the woman, and she's often has these sort of otherworldly qualities to her. It's really like, it's a really strange mix of writing. Like I said, it's at moments it's very existentialist, almost, and also like Kafka-like also, the way that the sort of like moving from country to country and the bureaucracy that's involved with that. And that's juxtaposed against these like almost very like touching and beautiful episodes of him idealizing this woman and dreaming about this woman. And it has a kind of like, I don't know if it's supposed to be funny, but it's almost funny. It's like a comic irony because she doesn't like him at all. He had betrayed her once before, and she just assumes like he's just going to betray her again, and she's kind of right. So yeah, really a great book, really strange. I don't think I've described it very well at all. Strange in a good way, like in an odd way. I think if you're a fan, I'm going to say it again, of J.G. Ballard. Oh, and I say because it's like if you watch any like sci-fi booktube, the J.G. Ballard thing, it's ridiculous. But it is very much like J.G. Ballard, especially the early Ballard novels that were concerned about climate crisis. But also Kafka, like I said, it's very Kafkaesque. And I even thought at times of Han Kang and how she is able to take kind of ridiculous or preposterous situations that probably could never happen, and yet she's able to write about them in a certain way that makes it very plausible, and the way that the characters deal with it is very human. So, great book, Ice by Anna Kavan, definitely worth checking out. All right, next one was Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. This is the first in a trilogy. I can never get the trilogy names correct. I think, they're just called the Imperial Rach novels, because I guess maybe there's more coming. This was really fascinating. I had heard about this book for years and just never got around to reading it. I bought this sometime last year along with 2 other novels in the series, and I'm really happy that I read it, really glad that I read it. Ann Leckie is a great writer, could probably be writing most anything, doesn't necessarily have to write sci-fi fiction, but she has chosen sci-fi as kind of her genre or her vehicle to tell her stories. Not a lot of hard sci-fi in here, which I was really happy about. I'm not a fan of hard sci-fi. I like storytelling and character-driven science fiction. So this has a very unique main character. The main character in this is an AI who is occupying a human body called an Ancillary. And there's a little bit of technology we need to understand. So this is far, far future, centuries into the future. Humans have spread, all throughout the galaxy, and there is a human empire called the Ratch, and they have a lot of amazing technology. One of which is that they have these massive warships. Actually, they have this whole fleet of this whole intergalactic fleet, and the main ships are powered by an AI who uses human bodies as the crew. And these human bodies come through annexations, which is when the Ratch basically take over a planet and a society and assimilate that society into their empire, and a portion of the population becomes ancillary, meaning they become the crew of these ships. So they're kind of put into a stasis. Somehow they're basically killed, but the body is preserved and the brain and the nervous system is preserved so that the AI can use it to power and operate these ships. There's a ship that went down. The ships are supposed to be indestructible, but there was a ship that was destroyed. The AI of it survived in this body, and now the AI is trying to find out how was the ship destroyed, what happened, and also why is no one talking about it? Why is it kind of like a mystery, a kind of a black bag kind of thing that people don't talk about? Really good, really interesting, a lot of really cool social commentary stuff in it, which I really liked. One of those things is that in this empire, in this Ratch empire, they only use one pronoun, and that's the feminine pronoun, she or her. And all the characters in the book are described as she or her, unless they encounter characters in another culture, and then they try to kind of scramble to figure out which pronoun to use. So sometimes that becomes like a gatekeeping thing, because language is very much a gatekeeping device. And sometimes it also becomes a reveal, where if you used she or the wrong pronoun, like you couldn't figure out which pronoun to use, you reveal who you are. So that's kind of interesting too. The other thing that's interesting though is that the characters are described physically, but never with gender identifying qualities. So a feminine character is not described as physically feminine with those types of traits, or a male character wouldn't have been described as being, typically male. So it's very interesting, but it's not in a preachy, woke way. It's just like, this is just the way it is in this culture at this time. So very interesting. It's part of a trilogy. I'm going to go ahead and read the other two, and then I'll do a video on all three for the trilogy. But definitely great science fiction, and similar to Ice and similar to The Stone Gods, this is the kind of science fiction I would recommend to readers of literary fiction who don't read science fiction but are curious to read science fiction and find out what it's all about. Definitely recommend that. So, next book was Adulthood Rites by Octavia E. Butler. I read this as a buddy read with my friend Lekden from Reading from the Depths. We also read this is the second novel in a series. The first novel is Dawn. This is the second one. The third one is Imago. And we're reading all three of them together as a buddy read. We had a very long discussion about this book that I'll link to below. It's over on his channel. We also had a discussion about the first book called Dawn. I'll link to that also below. What I want to say, I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but what I want to say is that Octavia E. Butler is absolutely an amazing writer, both as a storyteller and just her actual literal writing on a prose and a sentence level. So let's talk about the storytelling. She is not afraid to go into pretty wild and unexplored places. So this trilogy is really all about what it means to be human, what would happen if humans were to mix their genetic material with aliens, basically. And, you know, are we still human? Is that considered a sexual encounter? And that leads to issues of consent. There's issues of gender, because these aliens have 3 genders, male, female, and a neutral. And they can't procreate without the neutral. So basically every time they have sex, it's a threesome. So it's not pornographic or anything like that. But there are some sex scenes, I guess I'll just say it, in both books, and they're pretty wild. It's not like a physical thing. It's like a psychological and a mental thing, almost like taking mushrooms or LSD, where it's like really like wild in your mind. It's pretty cool stuff, actually. But she's a great writer. She was pretty popular in her time, but she's kind of fallen out of popularity. She's popular for other books like Kindred and Parable of the Sower, but I think that this series is one that's really worth checking out. Also, her writing, like I said, her prose is just absolutely amazing. She's really powerful and really controlled writer. And it's hard to find science fiction with really high quality writing and writing with control over it. When I say that, when I say control, she is just like fully in control of her writing. And it doesn't ramble, it doesn't go to unnecessarily wild places, it doesn't use horrible metaphors and similes and things like that. It's really literary style writing in that it's spare, it's sparse, and the word I always think of is just that it's timeless. And we both discussed that in the first video, is that these books read like they could have been written just within the last couple of years, but they were written in the 80s. So it's pretty amazing. So check out those videos down below. They don't get much views, but they're really cool discussions, and buddy reads are a great thing. So, all right, so I think that was about it for, oh no, I got one more science fiction. I'm not sure if this is actually science fiction or what, I'm not sure what this is. William S. Burroughs' Interzone. This was a reread for me. I read a bunch of William S. Burroughs in my late teens, early 20s. So I thought I would kind of go back to read Burroughs again, because there was a bit of a resurgence when the movie Queer came out a few months ago. I can't believe I read this book before. This is so weird and so bizarre. And I didn't really realize it until I got it and I read the back, and I kind of should have known what I was getting into. This book is basically the leftovers that didn't make it into Naked Lunch, which, if you've read Naked Lunch, is probably one of the most bizarre books you could ever read. Naked Lunch has a narrative that goes through it. This one doesn't really have much narrative. It's a lot of just like scenes with recurring characters, recurring settings, and recurring themes. And I get the sense, I should have researched it a bit more, I get the sense that it's a bit of a stitch up, in that he had a lot of this stuff and he just kind of stitched it together to put this novel together. It's interesting if you want to read experimental fiction and you kind of want to see what Burroughs is all about beyond Naked Lunch. I would recommend it. It does come with all sorts of content warnings, though, for sexual content, for drug use, and all kinds of other stuff. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Totally weird. Something you definitely need to read and experience, but just a weird novel. Okay, so moving on to literary fiction. I did read some literary fiction this month, a bit more than I thought I would. I read 2 Flannery O'Connor books this month. These were also rereads. The first was A Good Man is Hard to Find, which is a collection of short stories. It's very famous. If you're old enough, you probably read this in high school or maybe the first year of college. I think it's kind of fallen out of favor in the 2000s, but Flannery O'Connor, absolutely amazing writer, particularly writer of short stories. I absolutely love her short stories. I had not read these since about the 90s or early 2000s, so I was a little surprised at some of the word choice in here that I'm not going to share on YouTube. It was a little hard to swallow. I can't believe I used to read that word this much. It's not used in a derogatory way, but it's there. It's an artifact of its time. It's an unfortunate artifact of an unfortunate time. I will say, though, that in spite of that, Flannery O'Connor is a fantastic writer, particularly when it comes to satire and social commentary. She is absolutely a master at roasting conservatives, religious conservatives, social conservatives, political conservatives. And she does it in such a masterful way where she sets up a scene, she sets up a situation, and she lets it play out. She doesn't come out and tell you her thought or her opinion or what she wants you to think about these people in this situation. She just sets up the situation and lets it play out. Sometimes there's a lot of irony to it. Sometimes there's a lot of tragedy to it, particularly like with the title short story. But it's just fast, just absolutely great stuff. Similar to that, it was this other novel, Wise Blood, again, Flannery O'Connor. Very much a commentary on religion, particularly Southern Baptist religion, and also the strange phenomena in America of new religions. There's a character in here who starts his own religion, his own church, the Church Without Christ. It's just pretty amazing. I think that's something that's uniquely American. I could be wrong, but it's something that's not unusual in America for like a new brand of Christianity to come out. So anyways, great stuff. Flannery O'Connor, definitely a writer that should be reread. Another book, I did a video about this that came out recently. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by Carson McCullers. One of my all-time favorite novels, one of my all-time favorite writers. She did not publish very much. This was her first novel. She wrote it when she was 22, which is just absolutely astounding. One of the most heartbreaking novels I've ever read. Very much in the Southern Gothic tradition, but also heavily influenced by realism and modernism. So it's just kind of like the greatest, like that sweet spot between Southern Gothic writing, modernism, and realism. Like I need some sort of like triple Venn diagram. Carson McCullers right at the center of that. But great writing, great storytelling, great character development. It's a character-driven novel, not a lot of action in the story. It's really just all about these characters and their very sad, very lonely lives. So there you go. Only a couple more to go. Another one I read, this was a quick read and it was just kind of more of a curious read and a fun read. Strange Pictures by Uketsu. I picked this up in Bangkok at Kinokuniya Books, which is like a chain of Japanese bookstores. I bought it mainly because of the cover, and it's kind of like, it has a tag on it, The Chilling Japanese Mystery Sensation. And I have enjoyed a lot of Japanese mysteries and detective stories, so I thought I would try this out. I have thumbed through it, and it does, as the title says, it does have a lot of strange pictures. And that's kind of the whole premise, is that this man is finding strange pictures. In the beginning, they seem to be written by a father. And these two friends kind of use these pictures to try to figure out, was there a murder, who did it, that kind of thing. I won't give away any more. Not a groundbreaking book. Not a book that's going to like change your life or anything like that, but it's definitely a fun read. I could definitely see reading this like at the pool or in the summer or something like that. Just kind of a fun read and an interesting style. The Japanese style of writing, if I could characterize it, is definitely apparent in here. At times it felt like more like I was almost just kind of reading a manga where can be like lots of narrative passages and the characters tell the story rather than live the story, if that makes any sense. So there's like a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of interplay between the characters, which for some readers especially for Western readers or American readers, I could see them not liking that. So it's kind of something to think about before you read it. It definitely has a very different style, but I think it's also a great introduction to that kind of writing. So something to consider. And the last one was a manga, which I read on my ancient iPad. This thing is still working. That was Crying Freeman, Volume 1. I wasn't real hot on this one, but I read it just to kind of get through it and see if it got any better. It's pretty interesting. It's an interesting premise. There's a Japanese assassin who works for Hong Kong triads, so it'd be like Hong Kong Chinese mafia. And his nickname is the Crying Freeman because supposedly he cries before he kills someone. And the premise of it is that no one knows who he is because he kills everyone who sees him when he's in his assassin mode, except for one woman who witnessed him kill her father. So from there, of course, they have to meet, they have to fall in love, and blah, 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 blah. So not the greatest manga I've read, but it's pretty entertaining. It has some fantastic artwork. Hopefully I've got some panels here kind of flipping as I'm talking about it. Yeah, it's just more melodramatic than I personally cared for, but that's definitely one of the conventions of the manga style and the manga publication. So not sure I'll continue with this series. So not really my type of manga. I usually prefer horror or kind of dark fantasy or even sci-fi manga. So, okay, so there we go. It seems like a bleak month of reading, but it was actually quite enjoyable. That was everything that I've read in the month of March. And if you're still with me, I want to say thanks for watching. My name's Carl, and this has been Please Read Your Book.